Pat Riley spoke to media early Friday and talked about Jimmy Butler, Tyler Herro, and the future of the team. But did he give an outline of how the team will rebuild for title contention? We'll tell you on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your podcast app. It's the off season for the Heat, but not for us. We are still going strong 5 days a week, so follow us along. Have a great show for you today. We are reacting to Pat Riley's annual press conference. A ton of stuff to get to. We talked about Tyler Herro's future, his recommendation, maybe more than a recommendation for Erik Spoelstra and how Spo should approach the summer and what he's doing, and the future, more importantly, of the Miami Heat. He also addressed the elephant, the Jimmy Butler trade-shaped elephant in the room. So a bunch of stuff to get to in what is usually a pretty eventful press conference. What we did not get, David, was any players being told to shut their mouths. Nothing too fiery from Pat Riley. I think, if anything, what stuck out to me was the sober reflection that I think Pat Riley took on the roster and on the season. There was nothing there that sounded like posturing to me necessarily. I think he was truthful in saying that the team disappointed last year, that those two losses to Cleveland were humbling, the playoff loss, in particular the two blowout losses to end that series. And the fact that changes are likely on the horizon. So I'm going to play the clip and we can react to it here.
Well, I think we do have to make changes. There's no doubt. There has to be some change. And so until you change the way you go about doing the things that you do to win, if you don't win, you have to go about making changes to make sure that you can win. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but change is the highest form of sanity. It's in the present moment right now. We know what we have to do. We know what we just experienced.
Did that make any sense? Did that make any sense to you, David?
It did, actually. I recognize what he's trying to say there. But
Yeah.
This was, as you hinted, a notably drama-free press conference. In fact, very different, and even in format. Reporters caught off guard when Riley opened the floor immediately to questions. No blanket statement, no 20-minute kind of overview and his perspective on the season. It just kind of got baked into whatever responses he was giving to reporter questions. But he usually has a lot more to say, and he didn't talk about anything. He didn't talk about his thoughts on the season. He didn't give his thoughts, kind of just unfortunately, he does tend to kind of go long on some of his responses, and he's kind of just given as much rope as possible and see where he takes the conversation. And then that's when he answers questions. But this was different. He's like, he sits down, takes that first question immediately from Myra, and is ready to roll. And
it was about half as long as the press conference usually is too. This was maybe 30 plus ish.
35 minutes. Yeah.
35 minutes. Yeah. I mean, it's usually, 45, 65 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. But to answer the question about the change, I found that kind of refreshing. And I would say that maybe the more what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe the more cynical fans would say, duh, of course we need change or something along those lines. But you have to understand from the Riley's perspective and from any front office personnel's perspective, they're going to be as optimistic and positive about their team as possible. They put it together. They felt strongly about it. They were hoping for something,
at least outwardly.
Yes. And so they're not going to go there and say, yeah, I knew we were going to suck from day one, and I kind of just rolled with it anyway. So that's not what they're going to say. But by the same token, looking at where they are right now as a team and looking at what they have to do for the future, he's perfectly cognizant of the idea that they need to do something, not drastic, but certainly make changes on a pretty wide scale, I think. And we'll get into those later on, because he had a lot to say about the players on this roster, how they can compete with other teams across the league and things of that sort. And I think that's where his mindset is in terms of what changes he's
Let's do it now. I mean, when he talks about changes, what does he mean? Because does he mean rebuild and tank based on the comments today? No, that's not surprising. He said that this is a team that does not tank. And you can see him like grimace as he even uses the word in a pretty dramatic fashion. I was like, is this just acting? But yeah, I think he mentioned, he openly mentioned talking about adding a star player, and he used the word great player. He used the word talented player. He used even the word alpha at separate times. But I think he very clearly kept the door open in adding a star player several times during this press conference. He also mentioned possibly some lateral moves and talked about, for an example, when they went out and traded for Andre Iguodala and Solomon Hill and Jay Crowder before that bubble run, and how that changed and helped propel the team to the finals that year. And so when he's talking about changes, I think not everything, but a lot of things are on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what people are going to want to know most about is, hey, are you going to go out and try to put some chips on the table and go get a star? And he was asked directly about, hey, Tyler Herro's 25, Bam's 27. Are you looking to add somebody within that time frame, or would you be open to adding an aging star? And nobody mentioned Kevin Durant's name, directly, but Kevin Durant would be the aging star that we all know is going to be out there this summer. And he said,
Right.
Riley said, quote, I still think an aging player can play. I'm not against that. No, end quote. He also mentioned at a separate time, if it's talent that can help and he's humble, that's fine. If it translates to winning, that's all that counts, end quote. So in terms of the star trades, that's what he had to say. And I thought, again, that was pretty eye-opening. And I think, look, they didn't mention Kevin Durant's name, but I think the Heat are going to, I expect the Heat to make that phone call this summer at the very least.
And I just want to clarify something in case for the fans that didn't or weren't able to tune into the presser, or even if they did see it, because he did use the word rebuild on a number of occasions, but he doesn't view the term rebuild in the same way that our fan base does.
He means like
think
retool.
Of it as, yes, exactly. They're looking at adding more pieces, adding some players, adding a star level player. It's not the blow up that everybody wants or expects or anything like that. That's what it comes to. It has been associated with the term rebuild around the league circles. But for Riley's perspective, a rebuild is, this is where we were one year, and we're going to keep most of the same players. Like, he views the difference between 2000 and 2003 and 2004 as a rebuild because they traded away key players to acquire Shaquille O'Neal. Most people would not view that as a rebuild because you were able to keep Dwayne and everybody else and things of that sort. But you did rebuild his version of the roster into something completely different, and recognizing that Dwayne was so good that you had to add another key star in order to build in towards title contention. So that's what he's looking at. The humble term was an interesting one because I feel like it's almost like a veiled shot at Jimmy and the ego that came with Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't know how veiled it was. That felt pretty direct to me.
I mean, you could have said, you know what, it might have been just as much about Kyle Lowry too, and the idea that between Kyle and Jimmy both, those were two pretty big egos to try and manage on this team, and that's not what this franchise wants to be about. That's not what they're trying to take on. And as I said before, and as you and I both talked about in the previous episode about Kevin Durant, like, we don't think KD, he certainly has an ego as any NBA superstar is going to have, but not to the same degree where he's going to try and rock the boat considerably the same way.
I think when he says humble, I think what he means is he doesn't want a star player that's going to make it all about him.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of this Jimmy Butler experience, Jimmy was clearly making it all about him, right? And I don't even mean to, whatever, he was. Yep. Kevin Durant, to your point, isn't that guy. Kevin Durant he makes it about him when he's a free agent, but he's right? Like, he's the servant. That's great pull on that. So I think that he's open to that. I think he's open to everything. I just, to me, it's the part where he says that we need changes, and it does. I think you can't predict it, right? He did mention at some point something along the lines of, hey, like, players have to make the decision to come to your team. He did make a point to point that out. So you can't go so far as to predict changes. You never know what's going to happen. But I could predict that they're going to try to make changes. And that's all we can really do right now. And so any Heat fan that wants a changes, and after this season, you have to change things. We talked about it after the loss. That's the kind of loss that necessitates change. And Riley didn't run from that. And I appreciated that.
Yeah, I agree
Can I share one more quote with you?
Absolutely.
Quote, there are some lateral trades that can be made to improve the team. Do we inject an alpha, a great player to help maximize our performance in those double-digit leads that were lost? It could be that simple, end quote. So again, that just underscores the fact that, hey, lateral moves, star moves, all of it. Yes. Like I think when Pat Riley was essentially asked, would you do this? Would you do that? Would you do this? He said, yes, all of the above. D, all of the above. That was his answer.
So, one thing I think we could talk about is like, what does that actually mean? Because in order for you to acquire a superstar, you might have to blow up what you consider to be the current core of this team. But he's also talking about making peripheral moves or adding those kind of secondary role players, higher level role players than what's currently on the roster. And so, what does that mean for the players that are currently on this team? And is anybody safe from any potential trades moving forward? And I think that's something we can talk about in the next segment.
Let's do it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Dash Pass. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It's playoff season, which means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. The offer is valid from noon to midnight the day after the game, and terms do apply. What's your go-to move after an epic game? Sometimes you want to order wings and relive the highlights. Well, guess what? Imagine being rewarded with free food just because someone went off for 50 points. And if you've ever looked at delivery fees and thought, oh, there's got to be a better way, well, with Dash Pass, you get $0 delivery fees and exclusive perks like this one. How much would you save over the course of a season? So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass, unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. And when any player scores 50-plus points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 plus order and code Wingstop50. That's Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms do apply. We'll be right back.
So what do you think the changes are, David? I mean, I think this team, I think personally what this team will set out to do is they make the call on Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Here's the thing is this team needs to kind of do something before the trade deadline.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, before the trade deadline, before the draft. They have to have something in order before the draft. Because if they're going to use that 20th overall pick in the trade, then they have to have some sort of understanding with another team. Hey, we're using this 20th pick overall for you. We're essentially going to select this player for you. Make sure you tell us who you want when we're on the clock, and then obviously we'll trade this player to you afterwards. And then that essentially acts as that third first-round pick that they could move. And then if they do it on draft night, if the trade is consummated after draft night, then they can also include that 2032 pick. So they kind of have to do all of these things. Like the order of operations here matters, in other words.
Yeah.
And the sooner, the better. The problem with that is we know Kevin Durant is available. We don't really know who else is available. There's speculation about Giannis, Ja Morant, Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, Zion Williamson, all these players. There's speculation plenty. We have no idea that any of those guys are going to get traded. So Kevin Durant's the only one that we know. And I think that's got to be the first phone call if you're Miami. And then beyond that, you figure out the rest of the roster. You mentioned the Shaq trade. I think that's a good maybe analogy of what's going on here, because instead of Dwayne Wade, an all-timer, they have two really good cornerstones in Bam and Tyler, right? And then I think what Riley would really like to do is almost a combination of the 2004 offseason and then the 2005 offseason, where in 2004, he got the big star, Shaq, and then in 2005, what did he call it then? Swords and Shields? Gary Payton, Jason
James
Williams, James Posey. He just went, and I think that's what you could view as lateral moves, even though obviously it turned out to be an improvement. But role players, in other words, like go fill out the supporting cast. Really hard to do. Very, very difficult to do. But I kind of imagine some kind of combination, a little bit of that would be the ideal offseason.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think you're looking at turning over 80% of the roster. And I don't know what that entails, but I think the view is we know what we have here. We've seen what we have over the last couple seasons. And I think maybe 2 players on this roster are safe, and that's Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. And then everybody else is kind of up for grabs. Does that include Khalil Ware? As high as I think they believe his ceiling to be, I think it kind of does. I think he might be included in that kind of, maybe they don't view him as having star potential or as somebody who can move the needle considerably, or maybe he's just a good piece that might help you acquire the superstar that will put you over the edge. Like, and I get that perspective. We can break that down into any further detail if necessary. But I mean, you're basically looking to acquire superstars. You said that's the first order of operations right there. And then from there, it's okay. Do we get a shot blocking center if we had to include Ware in a trade? Do we acquire more shooting, more defensive minded perimeter players, things that 3-and-D type guys that can, or a point guard, et cetera, somebody who's going to be able to hand the ball or be our floor general, something along those lines. I think it's a really good way of putting it. Is you want to try and package the offseason of 2024 and 2025 together so they can get the star and at the same time build out the rest of the roster simultaneously. It seems like he's thinking huge changes need to be made.
Yep.
At least that's the way we're interpreting it. And so I
that
think
everything's on the table, right? Yeah, that he's like, hey, this team sucked. And the other part that I loved about it was him saying, and I've been telling people this because there's this storyline out there that the Heat figured out that the regular season doesn't matter. Pat Riley was like, we really care about the regular season. He just said it. And I loved it. Oh my God, if you're a potential season ticket holder, that's exactly what you wanted to hear, isn't it? It's, oh my God, they're not going to just win 45 games, back their way in through the play-in tournament, and just hope a miracle happens in the playoffs every year. He said, we want to be a number 4, number 3, number 2 seed. And that's what that's how he's talking about. This team is so far from that even just adding a star, unless it's like Giannis, obviously, but like just adding one other high-level player probably isn't enough to take this team to that point where we're talking about a team that can win 55 games, which is essentially what he's talking about, 50-plus games a year. This team is 13 wins below that. That's a hill to climb. That's a hill to climb, and it's going to take more than just one addition. All right, we got a bunch to move on to here, though. He talked also about Tyler Herro's extension. He was asked about it. I found this answer fascinating, David. Before we get into it, here is the clip.
The most ignitable guys offensively in the league, and we're happy to have him. He's 25, 26 years old. He's coming off an all-star year, and he was voted in by the coaches. That means something. And so he's pivotal for us as an offensive player. We just need more around him that can do a little bit of what he does, because now he's getting beat up. He's getting schemed, overly schemed. And so we'll learn a lot about that. And so, Tyler is a player, and I hope he could stay here the rest of his career and that we can build the team that he's part of.
So there's a really interesting thing that I took away from that, but let's start with the basics here.
Yeah.
Use the word pivotal and then said, I hope he's here long term.
Yep.
That is a pretty strong supportive stance of Pat Riley for Tyler Herro, and indicates that they want him here long term. He went on to say, basically, though, that doesn't mean that they have to offer him the extension right away. He said he was asked about the extension, and he said, quote, he answered that question perfectly last week. He's okay either way. We've already talked about it. I've talked about it with Tyler. You'll see what happens as we plan. Definitely Tyler is deserving of the thought of an extension. But he said it doesn't mean that we're definitely going to do it, but we'll discuss it. And he talked to Herro about it. So it sounds like not this summer, next summer.
Do you think this is different in terms of how the front office finally views Tyler? Because they've always kind of talked him up during these offseason pressers, but at the same time, his name has been historically linked through a number of different trades almost every offseason, except last, simply because they had no idea what was going to happen with Jimmy Butler, and there was no star available. And now that he's had this kind of rise of a season, do they view him internally as a foundational piece, or a piece that you have to build around? Because that's kind of what I got from his comments there. It's like you want to build a team around what Tyler can do. And that being the case, I don't think we've ever gotten that strong a confirmation of his value or his perceived value within the organization, because it's always been well, Tyler can do this, and we like what Tyler can do, but we're also making calls to Portland to see if Tyler can get his, get him shipped out to for Damian Lillard or Kevin Durant or whomever was available, Donovan Mitchell, etc. So this feels a little different. This feels like our plan is to add a third star to complement what Bam and Tyler can do and kind of flesh out the rest of the roster that way, not include Tyler in any pursuit of a superstar.
It's a great call. Yeah, I 100%. I think this was basically a full-throated support of who Tyler Herro is. And I think the reason why you've seen even Tyler Herro's status within the organization change and improve is Pat Riley went out last summer, and the same way he challenged Jimmy Butler, he challenged Tyler Herro. And one player responded one way, and the other player responded in another way. And Tyler Herro said, you think I'm fragile? That's fine. I'm going to play a career high in games. I'm going to be top 10 in the league in minutes played. And I'm going to completely change my game. You want me to be off the ball, Erik Spoelstra? Fine. I'll play off the ball. That's fine. And he was very honest and upfront about how that worked in his exit interview. And he's like, and then suddenly I had a career year. Isn't that crazy? And everybody was like, yeah, dude, that's what everybody was trying to tell you the whole time. But yeah, he was challenged. He rose to the occasion. Yeah. Like, you get a raise, dude. Like, that's how it works, right? Like, all of a sudden you're thought of a little bit differently in the organization. The Jimmy Butler parallels to that, though, I think are really interesting. I want to talk about that after this, plus a few other loose ends from Pat Riley's press conference. We'll talk about it all here next on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also on Xbox? Well, you can turn any TV into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. You just grab your paired controller and you subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. And you can dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Overhaul and Call of Duty Black Ops as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. You can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have a console, well, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. If you're somebody who's looking to gain a little more experience in the gaming field, well, guess what? This is the right way to start. So head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. We'll be right back.
So what really stuck out to me about that was the parallels between how he talked about Tyler Herro's extension versus how he talked about Jimmy Butler's extension last summer, and basically said the same thing. We're not going to talk about the extension this summer. We'll talk about it next summer. Wait. That's what he said. That's what he said to Jimmy Butler last summer, and it's what he said about Tyler Herro this summer, essentially. Now, when he talked about Jimmy Butler's extension last summer and was asked about Jimmy Butler, he obviously had the explosive, you should shut your mouth things and all that stuff. And he actually mentioned that today and did not apologize for that and did not apologize for anything in terms of how the Jimmy Butler situation was handled. I think that was a little misplayed, but I guess it's not surprising from coming from Pat Riley, who called himself an alpha today also. But I thought that the front office needed to be held accountable, and I don't think he held himself accountable to that at all. But whatever. The past is the past. He also quickly tried to move on. Ira asked him a question about Jimmy Butler right away, and he said, here it is. Let's not have any more things. And he kind of politely asked, can we just not talk about it anymore? I'm ready to move on. And that was the messaging, and I get it. But the way that he talked about Jimmy Butler last summer versus how he talked about Tyler Herro this summer, even though he's essentially saying the same thing, felt very different in vibe, right? It was, we love Tyler Herro. We want him to be here long term. We're also going to have to put these conversations about extensions to next summer. We've already talked about it, which is also a big difference because at that point, when Pat Riley talked to us last summer, him and Jimmy Butler had not talked about the extension. And he's already had a conversation with Tyler Herro, and it sounds like everything's copacetic and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, it's the iron fist and the velvet glove. It's soft on the outside and on the inside, it's the same message. We're not going to deal with this now. but we love you and we appreciate what you've done and what you bring to the table, and how we view you is different. And maybe it's just by virtue of Tyler and his improvement, the fact that they drafted him and they kind of view him as one of their guys. I don't think they had any necessary animosity towards Jimmy, but I think what you've said before and what we've talked about it, a lot, is that there was Jimmy fatigue throughout the franchise. It was a little, there was just a lot to deal with there in terms of what he wanted and how he acted, and his somewhat abrasive nature. And that's just who Jimmy is, and that's fine. At first, it's something you can kind of accept because the payoff was tremendous. You got a great player; it was able to take you to great lengths, etc. But after 5.5 seasons and continuously demanding and not, frankly, living up to what was expected of you as a leader for this team, enough was enough. And so I think they're happy and ready to move on. But conversely, they think highly of Tyler, and they see him as a player that can continue building and continue growing and will be a part of this version of this team in the near future.
Anything else on Jimmy Butler before we move on to some other loose ends? Like I said, he didn't really talk about it. I have one more quote for you. He said he was asked sort of about the culture and everything like that. And he said, quote, "Just because there were some issues this year that weren't culture oriented, but were player oriented with Butler, I'll never change my thoughts on culture," end quote. I mean,
it feels like he kind of just dug his heels in the sand a little bit this year more than any other. Like, I don't know that every presser of these kind of has a little give and take. This felt a lot more like, this is who I am, and this is who we are as a team, and we're not apologizing, nor do we feel sorry about it, even if it hasn't translated into the kind of success we want. And I don't know that I think he mishandled it. And personally, at least, I don't think he mishandled the pseudo conversation about Jimmy, because he just, again, I feel like what Pat Riley is saying is that we tried to handle it differently. We thought it was going to work out differently, and Jimmy didn't care, and that's it. There was nothing that we could do differently. At least that's what I'm interpreting from it in terms of his explanation.
I was kind of into it. Like I said, I know I got on here yesterday with the last episode we published and said that this organization needs to be held accountable in all of these things, and I do believe that. Like, there is accountability there. They screwed it up. Like, the season didn't go well. They have blame. Like, they share blame pie. Yeah. But I also kind of love that Pat Riley just came out and said, "It's our culture. If you don't like it, the hell with you. Jimmy Butler's not a part of this anymore. I wish him nothing well. I hope deep down in his heart somewhere, he wishes us well." That was kind of an interesting, that was a fun quote. I was like, you know what? Good. Dig your heels in, Pat Riley. That was the right way to put it. I was into it. I was in it. Hey, tighten the screws on the culture. Let's go. This is what we're doing. Humble superstars, all that stuff. I was into it. A couple loose ends here. He was asked about the luxury tax. We talked about this as a pressing question in our preview of Pat Riley's press conference. He was asked about it. He did say that they're going to try to avoid it. I appreciated that forthcoming answer. They have to avoid it one of these next 2 years, or else they enter the repeater tax, which is extremely punitive for a lot of different reasons, including team building reasons. And they can't do it. So it's either going to be this year or next year. And Pat Riley basically said that. My guess is that they'll try to avoid it this year, because it's just going to be it's right in front of you. You know how to do it. They're $9 million away from the luxury tax right now, but that's only with 13 players under contract. So, based on considering changes are going to happen this summer, or they're going to try to make changes this summer, they're close enough where you have to be cognizant of how close you are. But I also think that they're going to try to make those changes while also staying under the tax potentially. What does that mean for Davion Mitchell? I think is interesting. What does that mean for Duncan Robinson is interesting, because they can waive him and save $10 million and create another $10 million worth of cushion there. What does it mean for Terry Rozier, who his contract is expiring, but if you waive and stretch him, you could save about $16, $17 million in the short term, but then, you tack on an $8 million payment for the next 2 years while Rozier's not on your roster. So, Andy Ellsberg, that's what he's going to get paid to figure out.
Yeah. What else really stood out there?
The Spoelstra stuff.
The Spoelstra stuff. Yeah. Oh, we also I didn't mention that Pat has no intention of retiring. Right? I don't think we addressed that.
Yeah, he was asked, as he always is, no plans to retire. First time we heard a question about Spo potentially moving into a front office role, and he said no, absolutely not. So he shut all that down as we expected. You and I both predicted he would be asked, and we both predicted he would shut it down immediately, and that's exactly what happened. So, speaking of Spo, I'm going to take a little bit of a victory lap here because people kept asking us on the show, like, "Hey, why is Erik Spoelstra not coaching well?" You know, it wasn't his best coaching season. He's admitted that. We've talked about it a lot. I just said, like, I think this guy needs a vacation like nobody else has ever needed a vacation. It has been a crazy 3 years. The stuff in his personal life is well documented and out there. You know, the divorce, all the other stuff, it's out there. And he's dealing with that. He dealt with the finals run in 2023, the divorce shortly after that, then the coaching disappointing year last year, then going right from that to the Olympics, and then right from the Olympics back to this season, and then all the Jimmy Butler drama starting in November, December, and then the real drama starting to percolate and kind of boil over in January, and then the trade talks between January and February, and then a 10-game losing streak, and then everything that happened. I'm like, this guy needs a freaking break. No wonder he forgot he had a timeout at the end of one of these games, you know? And so I think his brain snapped a little bit. And I kept saying, this guy just needs to get away from basketball and go to a beach and get a pina colada in his hand. And I thought it was really interesting that Pat Riley, I know I'm taking a little bit of a victory lap here, but I thought it was interesting that Pat Riley said, quote, "I've seen the strain and stress on him like I've never seen before. He needs a break and he needs time to reflect," end quote. Yep. And he mentioned that Spo is either going to Hawaii or he's in Hawaii right now, but that a beach at Hawaii is planned for Erik Spoelstra. I think that's exactly what he needs.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, look, it's humanity. I mean, we know what a workaholic that Spo is. He's driven, etc. But, you know, the plan is every time there's an off season, they basically tell their players the same thing. Take a week or two off, go connect with families, go on vacations, you know, do what you have to do if you're planning like a marriage or a wedding or whatever it is that you want to do. This is the time period for you to do it. And then come back in 2 weeks and let's get locked and loaded and ready to go. And that's, I would say that Spo has rarely taken those 2 weeks that they give those players, that he probably heads right back into the office, even after a long finals run or a short playoff run. It doesn't matter. He goes back in there. He starts immediately scouting, starts looking at college players, start looking at potential free agents, starts working with his whatever players are still under contract.
His break last year was going to Vegas and running camp for the Olympic team.
Yep.
I mean, this guy's a total sicko.
Yeah. So for him to be able to just decompress, kind of just don't even look at basketball. And you and I were joking that he's probably watching playoff games and scouting college film right now while he's in his hotel room locked up in Hawaii getting nothing but room service.
I would tell him, like, dude, nothing. Don't even look at anything round for, like, just nothing orange or round, no nets, nothing basketball. Don't even look at wood, no hardwood on floors, like all tiles, all carpets, like.
Yeah,
just get away.
I hope Pat sends somebody from the front office or like a private investigator and make sure that he's not doing all these things. They're reporting back to him and saying, yeah, he's been locked up in his hotel room for the last 5 hours.
He's got the bartender on payroll in Hawaii. Just like,
he's got
his iPad at the bar every night looking at college film.
I hope not. That's good for Spo. He needs it. It's a good chance for him to kind of unwind and with that renewed energy, he'll have a better season, and he'll be
how it is,
especially
too,
if it's a different roster too. You know.
Yeah, and you know how it is. Like, you got to get away You got to get away from something. Like, literally get away from something in order to have epiphanies, right? It's like why your best ideas come to you in the shower. You walk away from the desk and you're like, oh, that's right, that's that thing I should have done. It just feels like Erik Spoelstra has never done that. Or not never, but hasn't had a chance to do that in a very long time.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So, interesting press conference. I thought very effective. I think one that should excite Heat fans. Again, the predictions of changes coming, given where we're at, they have to happen. And I think this is going to be a really active offseason for the Heat, and therefore it'll be a very active offseason for you and me. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.